Newlyweds Mehray Mezensof and Mirzat Taher were 2 days from leaving Xinjiang to start a new life in Australia when Chinese police knocked on the door in April 2017, seized Taher's passport and threw him into detention. During the next 4 years, Taher was imprisoned in Xinjiang detention centers on 3 separate occasions for months at a time, Mezensof told CNN from her home in Melbourne, where the married couple had hoped to live together. Lodera then in April this year, she received a phone call to say her husband had been tried for separatism and sentenced to 25 years in prison. How could they be that cruel? Like, how can they be that heartless? My husband didn't do anything. And he's already been through so much in the last 4 years, she said. Rights groups and United Nations experts have accused the Chinese government of detaining more than 1 million Uyghurs and Muslim minorities in extra-legal detention camps, which Beijing claims are vocational training centers designed to prevent separatism and religious extremism. Alongside that system of detention, experts say there is a separate program that involves the lengthy imprisonment of Uyghurs, like Taher, for alleged crimes including terrorism, separatism and inciting ethnic hatred. Chinese government figures show a steep rise in the number of people given lengthy prison sentences in Xinjiang from 2014, when Beijing's crackdown on the region's Muslim-majority Uyghurs ramped up. The records don't reveal the crimes committed, or profile the religion or ethnicity of those convicted. CNN cannot verify whether the policy is still in place as public data for imprisonments hasn't been released beyond 2018. Nathan Rusa, a researcher at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, ASPI, and author of a report into Xinjiang satellite imagery, said evidence of increased prison infrastructure and Uyghur testimony from the region indicated that systemic persecution through the courts was likely still prevalent. In 2014, about 21,000 people were sentenced to jail terms in Xinjiang. As more people went to jail, their sentences got longer. According to Xinjiang's statistical yearbooks, 87% of all sentences in 2017 were for more than 5 years, up from 27% in 2016. Rights groups say that sharp rise in the length of prison terms suggests the Chinese government's crackdown in the region is becoming more extreme. Xinjiang authorities stopped releasing prison data in 2018, cloaking more recent numbers in secrecy, said Human Rights Watch China researcher Maya Wang. I think there has been a practice of Chinese government officials hiding and manipulating figures, especially in more politicized environments, Wang said. It's kind of clear what's going on. Information from the Xinjiang Victims Database, a non-governmental organization that has documented more than 8,000 Uyghur cases, suggests the pattern of high sentencing rates continued until at least 2020, HRW said. CNN reached out to the Chinese government on allegations of a surge of Uyghur imprisonments in Xinjiang but has not received a response. Rusa, an author of the ASPI report, said satellite images appeared to show that lower security facilities were being decommissioned while high security prisons were expanding. According to ASPI, higher security facilities are usually identified by high perimeter walls, guard towers and a restricted number of entrances to the complex. Out of 61 detention sites, which were expanded or upgraded between July 2019 and July 2020, ASPI researchers said about 50% were high-security locations. Rusa said it was not always possible to tell if a high-security facility was a prison or a re-education center. There's no sign they're currently looking to loosen up their crackdown, at least in the sense of physical detention, Rusa said. With international opposition growing to its Xinjiang policies, the Chinese government has since tried to amplify its message through officials, diplomats and state-run media. Dilsar Ablimit, 21, saw the documentary from her home in Turkey and burst into tears. 2 of the people interviewed were her father and uncle. Ablimit hadn't seen her father since February 2017 when she left Urumqi to study in Turkey age 17. 2 months after she flew out of Xinjiang, she found out her father's 3 brothers had been detained. Then in September 2017, she learned her father had been taken, too. At the time, her mother told Ablimit and her siblings their father was on a business trip, but Ablimit suspected otherwise. For 4 years, Ablimit's mother refused to answer questions about their father, maintaining he would return soon. But when Ablimit saw him on CGTN, She realized he may never come home. Through tears, she said she barely recognized him. My father changed a lot. He lost a lot of weight, she said. In photos taken before he disappeared into internment camps, her father had a full head of hair and a mustache. In the documentary, his head and mustache were shaved, and he looked thinner. There was also one key detail that stood out. Ablimit's father was accused in the documentary of participating in a terrorist conspiracy, which in the past has carried heavy sentences. She is now worried he is in jail, rather than a detention center. Ablimit said her relatives are not guilty, it's a fabrication. My father and my uncle are never political or religious. My father and uncle are neither a terrorist or a separatist, she said. CNN has contacted the Chinese government to clarify her relatives' situation, but received no reply. Some Uyghurs said their relatives or friends serving lengthy prison sentences in Xinjiang were rushed through a quick trial, without access to an independent lawyer. In many cases, evidence for the convictions was not shared or explained. Nirola Alima, a Uyghur exile now living in Sweden, said the evidence that sent her cousin to jail was entirely fabricated. Alima said her cousin Maila Yakufu was sentenced to 6.5 years jail in February after being accused of financing terrorism. Alima said Yakufu's only crime was transferring money to Australia to help her parents buy a house. The imprisonment has left her family devastated, according to Alima. I think they're dead inside, she said. In a handwritten letter, which Alima said was penned by Yakufu in April, her cousin says she was forced to sign a false confession under threat of torture that was then used as evidence to convict her. They threatened me that if I did not admit guilt they would immediately take me to the National Security Forces and continuously interrogate me for a month, to see what else I will confess, the letter allegedly from Yakufu said. CNN has seen and independently translated the letter. Yakufu said she confessed not only to avoid torture but also to protect the rest of her family who still live in Xinjiang. I don't have the strength to resist such power. I really feel wronged and can't get over it, but I had no other option, the letter said. During major Chinese internal security crackdowns, such as the one implemented in Xinjiang, officials are often under pressure to convict large numbers of people to prove the effectiveness of the campaign, according to HRW. When it comes to people who are ethnic minorities, I think it is highly likely that many of the people there shouldn't be imprisoned, said Wang, the HRW China researcher. If you look at the verdicts that are available, it does show that they are being punished for behavior that does not constitute crimes. Families caught in the system endure lengthy waits for brief moments of contact with prisoners. Alima said recently her mother was able to chat with Yakufu over a short video call arranged by the local Justice Bureau. It only lasted 2 or 3 minutes. No more, Alima said. She just said, "I'm fine, take care of yourself, take care of my kids." Yakufu was visibly distressed when she saw 2 of her children on the call, Alima said. She looked like there was no hope or light in her eyes, Alima said. Her voice was shaking. She tried really hard not to cry. She held herself from the tears to be strong for her mom and the kids. If she started crying, it would haunt my mom forever. In Melbourne, Mezensof believes her husband has been imprisoned in one of the newly expanded high-security prison facilities in a town called Hami, 600 kilometers, 372 miles, from the regional capital Urumqi, where the couple used to live together. She hasn't been able to speak with him since he was sentenced. For years, Mezensof kept quiet about her husband's predicament to avoid inflaming matters. After he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, she said she had nothing left to lose. They did the worst possible thing that they can do to my husband, and now it's just like, there was no choice left, she said. Although international pressure is growing for Beijing to reverse its policies in Xinjiang, there is little indication that her husband will be released anytime soon. Mezensof said she won't stop trying. No matter how hard it gets up, I'm never gonna give up on him, she said. I'll never give up until he is free.